This is Rick Rule for Rule Investment Media, sponsors of the 2024 Natural Resources Investment Symposium, held July 7th through 11th in Boca Raton, Florida. Whether you attend personally in Boca Raton or from the comfort and convenience of your own house via live stream, remember that you will have access to the recordings of the conference for a long time. Remember too that we'll deliver you almost 60 hours of programming in 4 days, more than you could possibly absorb. The consequence of that is that we interview every exhibitor and every speaker before the conference so that you can spend time before the conference familiarizing yourself with exhibitors that you want to get to know better and spend your time at the conference with exhibitors who you think warrant your attention and your capital. Further to that, I'm delighted to interview today Darren Gordon, CEO of Centaurus. Please understand that Centaurus, like every other exhibitor, is owned in accounts owned and managed by me, which is at once disclosure of conflict of interest, but also by way of saying that Centaurus has been vetted, unlike exhibitors at other investment conferences. Darren, as a shareholder, thank you for your efforts on my behalf as a shareholder. Thank you, too,
No
for
problem.
your ongoing sponsorship of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Yeah, no, look, great to be here again, and looking forward to getting back to Boca Raton in July.
And we're looking forward to having you. For those attendees that we have that aren't familiar with Centaurus, what I'd like you to do is describe the nature of the asset first. Tell us something about what it is that you're doing, what metals that you are working on, and sort of the current scope and scale of the deposit.
Sure. Yeah, look, always like talking about the assets that we have. Centaurus is principally focused on its Jaguar nickel sulfide project in northern Brazil. It's located in the Carajás mineral province, which is one of the most prolific mineral belts anywhere in the world. But I think importantly for us, the resource that we have is, pretty much world class. It's just under 1 million tons of contained nickel metal. We're doing feasibility study work on that asset right now. We're hopeful and expect that we would have those feasibility study results out by the end of June, which should work very nicely for rolling into your conference. And that we expect that the economics that flow from that set of feasibility study work is actually going to really hit home how nice this asset is from an economics perspective.
Putting that in perspective for people who know less about the nickel market than they should, what we're talking about is a deposit where the feasibility study, supported by third-party mineral resource estimates, probably even at today's nickel prices, handily exceeds $10 billion in situ recoverable resources. In other words, by any definition, a tier one deposit. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an enormous deposit. We think it's probably one of the top 2 or 3 nickel sulfide assets anywhere on the globe as an undeveloped nickel asset. And we're doing all the work now to bring that to fruition. And I think the thing about it is that we're starting to develop this asset just as an open pit in the first instance. And so, you're going to have long mine life in relation to an open pit before transitioning into a underground at some point in time in the future. So economic wise, back to your point, huge amount of metal in the ground, huge amount of metal value in the ground. And our job's obviously to go in and extract it economically.
My job as a contrarian investor is first of all to buy size, which you've delivered. But second of all, I love hate. And the nickel deposit,
Yep.
the nickel business, really, I think, is a consequence of the increased production of nickel laterites in Indonesia and the Philippines, but also as a consequence of Russian selling. People need to understand that Russia needs money right now. And like
Yeah.
1990, they sell everything in the cupboard. I believe, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong, that the tolerance of Filipinos and Indonesians will likely be challenged by the incredible environmental destruction associated with lateritic nickel deposits. I flew over southern Sulawesi about 3 months ago, uh, and while nobody could accuse me of being Greta Thunberg, when I looked out the window, I was amazed by what I saw. Do you think I'm too optimistic about my forecast for recovery in nickel? I know you couldn't argue with my fact that if I love hate, nickel is hated.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we are a classic case to that where, the nickel price has been sold off. And in Australia, where we are listed on the stock exchange, basically all of those nickel sulfide assets have had to go into care and maintenance or be shut down. And so there's been a lot of baby out with the bathwater type approach with respect to Centaurus. We do feel like we're in a very, very different cost structure environment by being in Brazil. We do have the size of the resource, but I think overlaid on that, we have an extremely low carbon footprint associated with that because of being in Brazil, where 80% of their power is coming from renewable sources just on the grid. We're not tearing down rainforests to access our deposits. So you've got this overlay where we think that we will be able to compete with Indonesia on a cost basis, but we're going to just shoot the lights out when it comes to the emissions footprint side of things and the overall ESG credentials that go with the project. So, I think right now nickel's been out of favour quite dramatically, and we've been a victim of that. But we don't like being a victim, so we're going to still make sure that our project competes on cost, and then we think that the rest will look after itself, and the people in the global landscape will actually be able to see that this is a project and a nickel project that is well worthy of investment.
I think my attendees need to think about the parallels between the sulfide nickel market today and the uranium market in 2022. It's fairly obvious with regards to the plant closures in sulfide nickel that the production costs exceed the price that the industry is receiving for the product. What that means is that productive capacity is going to capacity heaven. And there is nothing like low prices to cure low prices. Meanwhile, you won't be producing nickel for a couple of years. In other words, you're not going to be producing into the heat. You're not going to be losing money. And when you open, you will be cost competitive with the producers who have put the less competitive producers out of business. I really think that
Yep,
people need to look at sulfide
absolutely.
nickel through the same lens that they should have looked at uranium in 2023. Again, is that am I stating this from your point of view correctly?
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. I think we feel like it's when you get into periods like this, you could basically be like everyone else, and you could pull back your project and go a lot slower. But our project is actually one that we think economically makes sense. The resource is there. So we're trying to go as quickly as we can, because the one thing is that prices will recover, and particularly in nickel, when they recover, they can recover extremely hard and they can go extremely high. And in those situations, stocks that have got exposure to nickel in that environment can be extremely well rewarded. But you've got to be in the market, you've got to be producing at those points in time. And so for us, we feel like it's about getting this project to the starting line to actually be producing and do that at the earliest possible time, so that we've got every opportunity to capture sort of this ride that we think is going to come when nickel prices, I guess, revert to somewhere where they should be. There's still a lot of things in the market that we don't think are factored in. The whole EV market in the US and Europe probably hasn't rolled out as quickly as what people might have thought it had. And that may be partly because of the constraint on nickel and where that's coming from. So there's this circularity in all of that. But I think when you strip it all back, Centaurus is still uniquely positioned to be able to sort of tap into that sort of opportunity.
I think that's right. People who are attracted to the distributed storage market, a fancy way of saying battery, forget that by
Yeah,
weight, the lithium ion battery, if you include both the anode and the cathode, is actually a copper nickel battery by weight.
mainly
Uh,
nickel. Yep.
that's an important thing. Let's talk about catalysts. You have, and I don't mean auto catalysts in this case.
Yes,
I
sure.
am talking about opportunities to de-risk a project. You said that you have a feasibility study coming up. This will be a bankable feasibility study.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
So we're working through that now. We've been on that for a little while and targeting to bring that together by the end of June. So that's obviously a fairly serious catalyst for any project, but I think even more so in respect to a project like this, where you are still looking at strategic partners to assist you with your funding. Everyone wants to see where you sit on that cost curve, so we need to demonstrate to the market that where our belief is where we'll land on costs will be actually there, and then you can, I guess, demonstrate this longevity in the market that off-takers and strategic partners are actually looking for before they actually commit to sort of supporting into the project.
it's also potentially catalytic for shareholders in the sense that it's the most advanced document that they're going to get with
Yep,
regards to what the net present value of the project is relative to the market cap.
correct.
Um,
Yep,
Better than a preliminary economic assessment, better than a pre-feasibility study. 100% accurate? Of course not. But what you're looking for is the assumptions that go into a feasibility study, whether or not they're rational and reasonable. And then the dichotomy between the net present value at current nickel prices and, if there's an acceptable model, the net present value at higher nickel prices relative to the market cap.
yep,
It is,
yep.
while an imperfect document, the best possible document for investors in development stage companies, I think. And if we're lucky, you will have just exactly that catalytic document available
Yep,
for our attendees at the conference. That's wonderful.
that is the plan.
While you are delineating the project, drilling it off tight enough and doing the met work for the feasibility study, are you still involved in exploration? That deposit always seemed to me like it wanted to get bigger.
Yeah, look, we drilled more holes towards the back end of last year, and we were still hitting mineralization down at 1,000 meters deep. So remembering this deposit starts at surface, the zones of mineralization are basically vertical, subvertical, and as we've drilled more, we've continued to hit more. But for the time being at Jaguar, we've stopped the drilling and the exploration there simply because we've got such a large
All you need.
resource already. So it's about sort of doing something with that now. But what we are about to do is start some exploration work on a little copper project, also in the Carajás mineral province of northern Brazil, where we've done a lot of low-level work. We've done soils, we've done the magnetics, we've been able to bring in IP surveys, and I think we're basically bringing out the truth serum now, where we'll do the first round of drilling that's ever been done on this project, and that should start in the next few weeks. So, Centaurus at its heart is still an exploration company, but when you get a project like Jaguar, you actually need to do the work to actually take it through and look to develop it. So we're doing all of that. We're not aggressively spending on exploration at Jaguar simply because it's already been very well defined, and a large portion of that resource of the sort of just shy of 1 million tons contained nickel is already in the measured and indicated category for JORC. So feeling pretty confident about the deposit. Doesn't need to be drilled out any tighter, particularly in the open pit parts of the deposit. As we go in the future, we'll need to bring drill holes back into the system, but that will be done from cash flow coming out of the project.
So our attendees need to understand, first of all, that a contrarian investor learns to love hate. Nickel is hated, and Centaurus is cheap. Investors also need to understand that Tier 1 deposits, I define Tier 1 as greater than $10 billion in situ recoverable reserves at current commodity prices, with best quartile return on capital employed and lowest quartile cost of capital. People who own Tier 1 deposits get rewarded. And I think Centaurus checks both those boxes. For attendees who would like to learn more about Centaurus, who at the company should they contact, and how can they contact this person?
Yeah, look, I mean, fundamentally, most of the investors can get in contact with me. My mobile's always available, and I can supply that at any point to your investor base. But if they can't get hold of me in the first instance, my PA, Brooke Edwards, is always available to sort of direct the calls in the right direction.
Great, that's
And
the
that,
right
you know,
answer.
that can, yeah, but that can be, you know, any forms of the social media we will respond to, or contact the company directly. And those numbers are usually on the back of our presentations.
And we'll be on your website.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So there you heard it. The buck stops with the CEO. He'll talk to you. That's exactly the right answer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all. And Darren, thank you for your efforts on behalf of shareholders, especially me. And thank you, too, for your support of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium.
Yeah, no, it should be great. Looking forward to getting there, Rick.